It's the morning star drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, you know. I'm on the morning star drive, you know.
Hey guys, how's it going? It's Tuesday, June 29th, and this is the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. We're on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So it is a wonderful and terrific Tuesday, so we'll get some coronavirus updates, current news from around the world, and of course it's Tuesday, so we are going to look into the book of Matthew, especially about the calling of the first disciple, Peter. All right, guys, how are you today? We've got Monday in the books. It's a new day, and hope you guys are enjoying this week so far. Really thankful you guys are joining us here on the Morning Star Drive, so keep liking and commenting, and want to hear from you guys and see how you're doing. So what is happening tonight? Tonight, we have a new vlog. I hope you guys will enjoy this on the Espresso with Sky channel. And of course, just something to let you guys know is we are going to be changing the direction of our YouTube channel. So it's going to be quite interesting to see. There was like inspirations and even revelations that kind of confirmed it. Okay. Also, last Sunday edition, we met Gita Salim from Indonesia. Great interview. If anything else, guys, it is a country that is being pioneered right now, and you get to meet and see what Indonesia is like. So I hope you guys will really enjoy this and meeting Gita. And of course, it is super fun and insightful. I hope you guys really enjoy it. Monday Zoom Bible studies. This is my last break. The last week of my break, and next week, July 5th, Monday, 7:30 p.m. Malaysia time, we're going to start again our Bible studies. So those of you who would like to join, or those of you who have like newcomers to join too, go ahead and do it. And I think it's really perfect. It's so perfect because this is the week of evangelism. We evangelize and we can start everything next Monday. So I hope that that is something that all of us are going to enjoy. All right. So on this Tuesday, let's get this show started on the road. What's going to happen today? Who's our featured artist of the day? Today's featured artist is from the Paper Music Associates in Korea. It is PGY, and this song is their latest single. It is Dear God of the Universe. The second song is Mariah Henry from America with the song Paradise. And last but not least, we have Renee Lai from Taiwan with the song Head Above Water. All right, guys. So, we're in the 29th day, second last day of June. Guys, we're already hitting July, which is crazy. But good news is, we're going to end this month well. We're on the 29th day of the prayer condition. And make sure you just put in a little prayer for all these member artists from around the world.
그 붉은 반짝임은 우주의 어둠을 함의하고 있었지. 언제부터 그렇게 스스로를 가렸니? 언제부터 그렇게 아름다웠니? 너와 함께 있으면 난 도망치고 싶어. 혼자 있으면 네가 보고 싶어. 두려운 무릎 쓰고 오늘도 집을 나선다. 용기 내 어디든
go. You gotta really show him that you want it though. He can show you where you wanna be. You gotta put in words that'll be unseen. Look, and it's just like that. Take it to the golden city just with a snap. You don't even got a trip, no, we got your back. All you gotta do is sit back and relax. There's this love between you and I that is so strong. I don't wanna ever lose it, then I'll be alone. But if I leave his arms, I wonder, I'll be sitting all alone just to ponder. Make up your mind and act as you should. I'ma show you we can be the greatest duo that ever stood. Living with the Lord every day is like my paradise. If you leave your worries and concerns to him, you'll be alright.
Really wanna live with happiness and hope. You gotta live with the one you love the most. And don't forget that even on darkest roads, just find the Lord and grab your heart. Control your deeds. A pretty paradise right from the start.
Paradise.
All the night brings darkness. You're like the sun, yeah, you always shine so bright. And I can't wait to see you, cause you are my only paradise. Together we're the greatest. Just like the moon and the stars, we light the night. And I can't wait to see you, cause you are my only paradise.
The weather's fine, the temperature's cool. 7 on earth, cause I'm with you. Ain't nothing better when we live forever. When we make us to be one true love. Birds of a feather flock together. And it's just like that. Give you my love, cause I don't hold back. Call me your love, cause I know you got stacks. This love is real, cause we got it like that. Sandy walks on the beach, summertime. Feel the heat, that's a love paradise. Holding hands, cool breeze, cloud 9. Make heaven together with you and I. Sandy walks on the beach, summertime. Feel the heat, that's a love paradise. Holding hands, cool breeze, cloud 9. Make heaven together with you and I.
Really wanna live with happiness and hope. You gotta live with the one you love the most. And don't forget that even on darkest roads, just find the Lord and grab your heart. Control your deeds. A pretty paradise right from the start.
Paradise.
All the night brings darkness. You're like the sun, yeah, you always shine so bright. And I can't wait to see you, cause you are my only paradise. Together we're the greatest. Just like the moon and the stars, we light the night. And I can't wait to see you, cause you are my only paradise.
He can take you where you wanna go.
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 He can show you what you wanna know.
He can show you what you wanna know.
I have realized I'm not alone, because living with you is like my paradise.
All the night brings darkness. You're like the sun, yeah, you always shine so bright. And I can't wait to see you, cause you are my only paradise. Together we're the greatest. Just like the moon and the stars, we light the night. And I can't wait to see you, cause you are my only paradise. All the night brings darkness. You're like the sun, yeah, you always shine so bright. And I can't wait to see you, cause you are my only paradise. Together we're the greatest. Just like the moon and the stars, we light the night. And I can't wait to see you, cause you are my only paradise. come rescue me. I'll be waiting. I'm too young to fall asleep. God, keep my head above water. Don't let me drown. It gets harder. I'll meet you there at the altar as I fall down to my knees. Don't let me drown, drown, drown. Don't let me drown. Don't let me drown, drown, drown. Keep my head above water, above water.
And there you have it. That is Renee Lai from Taiwan with the song Head Above Water. That's a cover from Avril Lavigne, Canadian. Before that was Mariah Henry from America with the song Paradise. And of course, the feature artist of the day is PGY from PMA in Korea. And that song is Dear God of the Universe. All right, guys, so let's get into some news going on around the world. And of course, we see a lot of good news, especially as the COVID infection rates are going down. In the world, there's 181.8 million cases, 3.9 million deaths, and down back to 2.16% mortality rate. Top 5 countries going by daily infection rates. We have India, 30.2 million cases, 396,000 deaths. Brazil, 18.4 million cases, 513,000 deaths. Russia, 5.4 million cases, 133,000 deaths. Colombia, 4.1 million cases, 104,000 deaths. And Indonesia is back in the mix, guys. They have a lot of things going on. 2.1 million cases, 57,000 deaths. Now let's take a look at the actual daily infection rates. India goes back on top with 46,000 cases in a day, and Brazil drops to number 2 with 33,000 cases, Colombia at 32,000 cases, and then Indonesia rises to number 4 with 21,000 cases in a day, and Russia rounds out the top 5 with 20,000 cases. And of course, here in Southeast Asia, like we just said, Indonesia at 21,000 cases in a day, and then it's the Philippines with 6,000 cases, and then Malaysia with 5,500. And yes, we are going to be in lockdown until we go under 4,000 cases, which it looks like for at least another month. So we'll see what happens. Okay. So let's go into the current news for today. Top 3 things. Big news over there in the Middle East. We have U.S. airstrikes in Iraq and Syria, and they target Iran-backed militia. So the U.S. has launched airstrikes against an Iran-backed militia in Iraq and Syria. The Pentagon announced the strikes hit operational and weapons storage facilities in response to drone attacks by the militia on U.S. forces. So President Biden has been clear that he will act to protect U.S. personnel, and this is the second round of airstrikes Joe Biden has authorized against Iran-backed militias since taking office. Now, U.S. forces based in Iraq have been hit several times in recent months by drone attacks. Iran has denied any involvement. Around 2,500 troops, U.S. troops, are based in the country as part of an international coalition fighting the jihadist Islamic State. And according to the Pentagon statement, the defensive precision airstrikes hit 2 targets in Syria and 1 in Iraq. And it said Iran-backed militia groups, including the Kataib Hezbollah and Kataib Sayyid al-Shuhada, used these facilities. So since 2009, the U.S. has designated the Kataib Hezbollah as a terrorist organization, accusing them of threatening the peace and stability of Iraq. And the U.S. acted in self-defense, the statement said, taking necessary, appropriate, and deliberate action designed to limit the risk of escalation, but also to send a clear and unambiguous deterrent message. Now, the Pentagon did not say whether anyone was killed or injured in attacks, but according to the AFP news agency, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, a UK-based monitoring group, said the 5 militia fighters were killed. Right? 5 militia fighters were killed and several more wounded in Syria in an attack by U.S. warplanes. And then the Syrian state news agency, meanwhile, reported that a child had died and at least 3 other people were wounded. So Iran's influence over Iraq's internal affairs has grown steadily since the U.S.-led invasion that toppled Saddam Hussein in 2003. And the strikes come as Iran has been holding talks with world powers, including the U.S., about reviving a 2015 nuclear deal which lifted sanctions against the state in exchange for Iran stopping some nuclear work, right? So some countries, including Israel, believe Iran is trying to build a nuclear bomb, something Iran denies. And former U.S. President Donald Trump unilaterally withdrew the U.S. from the agreement in 2018 and reimposed sanctions. So that's first on the news, which is a little bit scary that there's airstrikes going on now between the U.S. and these Iran-backed militias and Syria. Second on the news is outbreaks emerge across Australia in new phase of pandemic. So a COVID outbreak in Sydney linked to the highly contagious Delta variant, which is from India, has grown to 128 cases. So a small number of positive infections have also been recorded in the Northern Territory, Queensland, and Western Australia. And this is the first time in months that cases have emerged in multiple parts of the country at the same time. So state and territory leaders will meet Prime Minister Morrison on Monday for an emergency meeting. And Treasurer Josh Frydenberg said Australia is facing a critical time in its fight against COVID, and various states are shutting their borders and enforced new restrictions to prevent further spread of the virus. Basically, what's happening right now is a lot of businesses and venues have been ordered to shut, and they are expanding the lockdowns in those areas where it's very, very serious. And the New South Wales Premier, Gladys Berejiklian, on Monday reported 18 new cases, down from 30 reported the previous day. Nearly 59,000 people had been tested in the past 24 hours. So basically, people are, the government is saying that they have to be prepared for the numbers to bounce around and be prepared for the numbers to go up considerably, because with the strain, they're seeing almost 100% of transmissions within households, right? So there is a rapid spread. While 2 cases in Western Australia have been traced to the Sydney outbreak, the positive cases in Queensland and the Northern Territory have been linked to people who became infected despite completing hotel quarantine. So the remote Northern Territory has recorded 7 cases, prompting authorities to extend a lockdown of the capital. And the Delta outbreak there had spread from a mining camp and now pose significant risk to the community, officials said. Right, so let's see what's going to happen and what's going to happen over there in Australia. Of course, they do have a vaccination rollout, but we all know that from the reports I did before, it is very, very slow in Australia right now. So it's so far just under 5% of Australian adult population has been fully vaccinated, right? And about 30% have received the first dose. So, and they're all receiving either Pfizer or AstraZeneca. So we'll see what is going to happen there in Australia. So a lot of people are thinking that Australia has a lot of people vaccinated, but only 5% are fully vaccinated, which means there's still a very, very high risk. And if you think about it, only 30% have one shot at least. That means 70% still have a high chance of, catching the coronavirus, especially this Delta variant. So last but not least, we have a heat wave going on in the Pacific Northwest in the US and Canada. My mom even texted me about this the other day. Sweltering heat wave has hit large parts of the US, Pacific Northwest, and Canada, sending records tumbling. So the US National Weather Service has issued excessive heat warnings and watches across nearly all of Washington and Oregon state. Parts of California and Idaho are also affected. So and parts of Oregon are calling life-threatening heat. Some cities have opened cooling centers where residents can escape the heat in air-conditioned buildings, and the soaring temperatures are due to a dome of high pressure hovering over northwestern U.S. and Canada. So experts say climate change is expected to increase the frequency of extreme weather events, such as heat waves. However, linking any single event to global warming is complicated. So as the climate changes, there could be an increase in the number of deaths from floods, storms, and heat wave, experts say. And they said that even hotter temperatures were forecast on Sunday and Monday throughout the Pacific Northwest and the Northern Great Basin. So how high have the temperatures gone? Well, in California, the Northern California, Washington, Oregon, they say that temperatures are expected to soar about anywhere from 10 to 15, or less than that, about 10 to 15 Celsius above the average in those states. So Seattle and Portland are expected to break their current all-time high temperature records on both Sunday and Monday. On Saturday, so temperatures in Seattle reached 101 Fahrenheit. I think that's like a 38, 39 degrees Celsius, making it the hottest June day there on record, and residents are urged to avoid extended periods of time outdoors. Shops have sold out of portable air conditioners and fans, and a number of coronavirus vaccination drives have been canceled. So the area there normally sees mild weather, and many people don't really have air conditioning. That's why they're going out to buy it, right? So Oregon's health authority has removed the coronavirus capacity limits at large venues with air conditioning, such as cinemas and shopping malls, in order for people to take shelter from the heat. Over here in Canada, right, that's where I'm from, British Columbia, that's my province, recorded the hottest temperature in the country on Saturday, 43.2 degrees Celsius, which is crazy, guys. So parts of Saskatchewan, Alberta, and the Northwest Territories are under a heat warning. So the heat there is also expected to continue through the week with records expected to fall. All right, guys, that is the top 3 news for today. Hope you guys really got some new prayer topics, what to pray for Canada and America over there with the U.S. Airstrikes with Iran and Syria. And, of course, we have some things going on in Australia, too. All right, so let's get into a time of praise and worship as we finish these physical news. Let's go into something a little bit more spiritual. We're going to start with a song that has to do with the heat wave, but a little bit different heat wave because, we're going to start with the song is My Beloved is Like the Sun. And yes, look at that heat wave of God's love pouring down into the people. Second is Let's Preach the Words of Life, in tune with this week's message. And of course, last but not least, we'll break it down with all we lived through from the past to the present. So everyone, as one body of the Morning Star Drive, I hope all of us here will give glory, praise, and honor to the Holy Trinity.
Sunrise here on the beach. Here I am
every soul in the world. Truth is on fire, so we are blazing, giving all our youth, giving all our youth. We are captured perfectly only through love. We have gained heaven's golden city. Truth is on fire, so we are blazing, giving all our youth, giving all our youth. We are raptured perfectly only through love. We have gained heaven's golden city. We have gained heaven's golden city. We have gained heaven's golden city. From the past and to the present, all we lived through. All this time, the Trinity poured out grace and love. Everywhere the Holy Son was by our side, He protected us with endless love. Day and night, the Holy Spirit inspired us for her love and endless grace. We will thank and love her every day. Even through harsh tribulations, blessings came through the Trinity's deep love. Everywhere that we set our feet, they were loving us and keeping us safe. Just like the Lord, we will love them with all we have, giving our whole body and heart, without changing, now forever. We will love the Trinity always. Without changing, now forever, we will love the Trinity always.
And there you go. That is All We Lived Through from the Past to the Present. Really, really love that song. I enjoyed that one. Before that, let's preach the words of life. Especially this week, guys, let's preach those words. And of course, the heat wave song, that is My Beloved is Like the Sun. So I hope you guys really enjoyed that time of giving glory and honor and praise to the Holy Trinity. Now, it is Tuesday, and our word study for today, we're going to go over, especially this week's message is about Matthew chapter 4, 18 to 20, which is a calling of the first disciple, the prime disciple that was talked about most in the message, which is Apostle Peter. So what I want to do today, because we talked about Matthew a lot, we're going to talk more about the Apostle Peter and who he really was, and what we know just kind of from the limited information that we have. And one of the things that I find really sad is there was no one there to tell the full story. Like Peter should have told his own story, but the Gospels are very limited in teaching about the apostles, and that's why I do the Sunday editions, and people can tell their own story of how they came into this history. But let's take a look at the Apostle Peter. So Peter, yes, he's Saint Peter the Apostle, one of the 12. And his original name was either Simeon or Simon. Okay, Simeon or Simon, that's his original name before Jesus changed it. And he died roughly around 64 AD. Okay, so he is obviously one of the 12 apostles of Jesus Christ, and he's recognized in the early Christian church and the Roman Catholic Church as the leader of the 12 disciples. And of course, the Roman Catholic Church also says that he is the first pope of the Roman Catholic Church, which is quite interesting. Peter, we know, was a Jewish fisherman, and he was called to be a disciple of Jesus at the beginning of Jesus' ministry. And of course, he received from Jesus the name Kepha. Now, Kepha is Aramaic, and that's the original name that Jesus gave to Peter, which was Kepha, okay? Because Jesus spoke Aramaic. Now, Kepha means rock. And this is why, so how do we get the name Peter? Well, Kepha is Aramaic, and the Greek translation of Kepha is Petros, and that's why we get Peter from Petros. Okay, that's the Greek. So who was this person when it comes to, and what was his life like? Well, what we have on Peter's life is very, very limited to the New Testament, and there's not like a book about his own life, right? It's very limited to the New Testament, which is like the 4 Gospel, Acts, and letters of Paul, and whatever like that, right? And his own books, which is not about himself. And he was probably known originally by the Hebrew name Simeon, right? Hebrew is Simeon, and Simon is Greek. Now, Simeon appears only twice in the New Testament, and Simon appears 49 times. And at very solemn moments, he was called Simon, son of John. And the Gospel according to John prefers Simon and says it 17 times. And you rarely find, when you hear the word Simon Peter, it's rarely found elsewhere in the Bible except in the book of John. Now, Paul also called Peter, right, Paul has a distinct preference, and 8 out of 10 times for the Greek transliteration Kepha. So that Paul always called him Kepha, right? And that's the Aramaic name or title Kepha, which means rock. And the Gospels and Acts use the Greek translation Petros approximately like 150 times. And the Synoptic Gospels, as we remember this, guys, Synoptic Gospels are the ones that are very similar to each other, and that's Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And John is the one that is not part of the Synoptic Gospels. So the Synoptic Gospels and Paul, there is indirect evidence that Peter was the son of John and was married. Okay, so his family originally came from Bethesda in Galilee, but during the period of Jesus' ministry, Peter lived in Capernaum at the northwest end of the Sea of Galilee, where he and his brother Andrew were in partnership as fishermen with James and John, the sons of Zebedee. So those are the first 4 apostles right there, which is quite amazing that they're all good friends. Now, there is a lot that can be learned about Peter from the New Testament, either explicitly from the statements made by other authors, or or indirectly from his actions and reactions, right? And you'll see it in a number of episodes in which he, when you'll see what he's like. So he was at times vacillating and unsure, as in his relations with the church of Antioch when he first ate with the Gentiles and later refused to do so, right? Like, should I be with the circumcised, uncircumcised? And he could also be very resolute, right? And occasionally he was depicted as rash and hasty, irritable and capable of greater anger, and often he's pictured as gentle but firm, and as in his professions of love for Jesus, capable of great loyalty and love, right? So the New Testament kind of reports that Peter was unlearned in the sense that he was untrained in the Mosaic law, right? You'll see that in Acts chapter 4 verse 13, and it's doubtful, and it's doubtful that he knew Greek. So he apparently learned slowly and erred time and time again, but later when entrusted with the responsibility, he demonstrated that he was mature and capable. And of course, the Gospels do agree that Peter was called to be a disciple of Jesus at the beginning of his ministry, but it's very different in each of the all 4 Gospels when and where the event took place, right? It's recorded differently. Right? Some of the accounts scarcely mention James and John. It omits Andrew while emphasizing the call of Peter, right? And Matthew and Mark, Matthew and Mark note the call of the 4 men. And with Luke, agree that the event took place at the Sea of Galilee, and the Gospel according to John places a call in Judea and states that Andrew, who had been a follower of John the Baptist and had heard John indicate that Jesus was the Lamb of God, left John and introduced Peter to the Messiah, who at that time gave him the name Kepha. Right? The Synoptic Gospels are probably correct in recording that the call to Peter was extended in Galilee when Jesus first began his work in that area. Then the Gospel according to John, it's kind of more of a theological, spiritual book than historically motivated. And John wishes to stress that Peter recognized Jesus' messiahship from the beginning, and that Jesus had seen Simon as the rock from their first meeting, right? So that's quite interesting too. And the Synoptic Gospels largely agree in the amount of emphasis each gives to the leadership of Peter among the 12 apostles. There are differences too, but they kind of put him all as the leader of the 12. For example, in one case, Matthew and Luke note that Peter was a speaker in questioning Jesus about a parable, but Mark attributes those words to the group of disciples. And with differing degrees of emphasis, the Synoptic Gospels agree that Peter served as spokesman, the outstanding member of the group, and enjoyed a certain precedence over the other disciples. Like whenever the disciples are listed in order, like Peter's is usually mentioned first, right? And we're not certain whether this is like a priority or it's just due to the reading back into the gospel narrative that Peter's importance in the apostolic church and his, we're not sure exactly, but he's always mentioned first. And those not belonging to the immediate followers of Jesus also is quite interesting. So those who weren't even following Jesus like directly, they were also recognizing the authority of Peter. Like when the collector of the temple tax approached Peter for information, and again with characteristic quickness, he sought a clarification from Jesus on behalf of the disciples, and we know that is the Peter and the fish, right? And as both an individual and a representative of the 12 apostles, he made a plea for personal preference in the kingdom of heaven as a reward for faithful service, and that was Peter, right? And some occasions in the Bible, Peter's mentioned by himself. And others around him are just called accompanying him, right? So that's how important he was. And even when the three disciples close to Jesus, the pillars, which is Peter, James, and John, figure in a particular incident, it is frequently Peter alone who is named. And when the three are unnamed, Peter's name invariably appears first. And it was his home in Capernaum that Jesus visited when he cured Peter's mother-in-law, which means that he was married. And it was Peter's boat that Jesus used when he instructed the crowd. And, Peter, too, he possessed remarkable insight, displayed his depth of faith in the confession of Christ. You are the Son of God, right? And then he said that to Jesus in Matthew chapter 16. And it was Peter who rebuked and in turn was rebuked when Jesus says, "Behind me, Satan." So he was very strong character, but he got rebuked for that too. And we know that Peter had that momentary weakness when he denied Christ 3 times too, right, in the courtyard when Jesus was taken away. But of course, later on, you see that Peter matured a lot, discovered his strength, and he was charged by Jesus, and he told him to feed my sheep and help others, right? And finally, Peter, who survived his denial, is permitted to be the first of the apostles to see Jesus after the resurrection. Okay, so that is quite interesting when you hear about Peter. And Peter was a great, the prime disciple of his time, and he basically, if you just look at the information given by the Gospels, Peter was the first to emerge immediately after Jesus' death as the leader of the earliest church, right? And for about 15 years after the resurrection, he dominated the community, right? And he presided over the appointment of Matthias as the 12th apostle to take place of Judas Iscariot, right? And he's the one that kind of raised his voice and preached at Pentecost. He's the one that brought the 3,000. He was served as an advocate for the apostles before the Jewish religious courts in Jerusalem. And he's the one that exercised the role of judge in the disciplining of those who erred within the church, right? So this really, really is amazing when you understand Peter. And this is just from this is not even on him. It's just from the book of Acts and from the Gospels. And there's no book basically on Peter himself, right? So he was someone who preached the gospel, and he was the one that many miracles happened, like when he was in prison and then the earthquake came, opened all the cells and whatnot too. And he was basically unchallenged in leadership, right? And at a certain point, that unchallenged leadership came to an end. And it's not really clear where Peter went, but, no one's sure. And it was really, that's why we really need these books. And people need to write their autobiographies of what they went through. It's really, really interesting. But the later work of Peter is not covered in Acts. And perhaps because the author of Acts, which is Luke, they said that perhaps he was planning a third book that would have included a discussion of where Peter went after, but it was never written or was written and later lost. So we're not sure. But this is how important it is to understand who the apostles were at that time too. So I do think you do have to write down your message into a book also, right? So, whatever these momentary glimpses into the period of the later ministry of Peter, no one really knows. And it's kind of a sad thing that we don't, right? But this is kind of when Peter was Peter was at his height. And even, Paul, when Paul was evangelized, Paul met Peter 3 years after his conversion, right? And in that record, the meeting, he met with Kepha. It says Kepha. And that's when Paul first met Peter, and then met him again 14 years later. And of course, there was that that incident with Paul rebuking Peter for not sitting with the circumcised and the uncircumcised too. So that is quite interesting also. So it's really interesting to learn more about these apostles, and I hope you gain a little bit more insight from Peter. Okay, so this means that we're going to get into that is the word study for today. I hope you guys learned a little bit more about Peter, which means we'll move to our next section, which is the song of choice for today. And I'm going to go back to 2001, 2002. Not great singer, but she was one of my favorites. I think I had a crush on her for some reason. I was really young, 2002 in Korea. I bought her album. Her name is Boa, old school K-pop, and this song is called Number One. And ironically, it did not go to number one, but this is Boa with Number One.
어둠 속에 네 얼굴 보다가 나도 몰래 눈물이 흘렀어. 소리 없이 나오며 비춘 건 finally 나 알고 감싸준 거니. 처음 내 사랑 비춰주던 건 나의 이별까지 본 거야. You still my number one. 날 찾지 말아줘. 내 슬픔 가려줘. 저 구름 위에 너를 숨겨 빛을 닫아줘. 그라는 이 길이 내 눈물 모르게. 변한 그를 욕하지 말아줘. 네 얼굴도 조금씩 변하니까. But I need you. 널 잊을 수 있을까? Want you back in my life. I want you back in my life. 나의 사랑도 지난 추억도 모두 다 사라져 가지만 You still my number one. 보름이 지나면 작아지는 슬픔이 날 대신해서 그의 길을 배웅해줄래. 보다 전한 내 사랑 나처럼 비춰줘. 가끔 잠든 나의 창에 찾아와 그의 안부를 전해줄래. 나 꿈결 속에서 따뜻한 그의 손 느낄 수 있도록. 하지만 오늘 밤 날 찾지 말아줘. 내 슬픔 가려줘. 저 구름 위에 너를 숨겨 빛을 닫아줘. 흐르는 이 길이 내 눈물 모르게. 구름이 지나면 작아지는 슬픔이 날 대신해서 그의 길을 배웅해줄래. 보다 전한 내 사랑 You still my number one.
And that was Boa, right? And that song is Number One. That was way back 2001, 2002 when I was visiting Korea. I bought her album. It was so good. I think I might have had a little crush on her too, but I don't know. I was really young back then. Was I really young? No, I wasn't young. I was like 24 years old. But either way, that was Boa. Okay, I'm not sure if you've seen her today. She was raised like to be an entertainer, and she learned English, Japanese, and Korean. Well, she's Korean, but she learned Japanese and she has Japanese albums that went out in the Japanese language, and she does have some songs in English, but those ones are not very popular. But today, if it came out today, when you have BTS and all these other K-pop groups coming out, she would have probably done a lot better today rather than what she did before. Okay, so let's go into the last segment for today, and it's my I want to talk about evangelism as my last thoughts for today, because I talked a little bit about yesterday of the type of expectation. Of course, love is the number one thing before anything else, and that has to be first before you think of a result, right? Because we see in 1 Corinthians 13, 1-3, the result doesn't make a difference if there's no love. So you see how love takes a priority and precedence over all things, okay? So what I want to get into now is one thing we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves is when the word says go evangelize or go do this and go do that. What happens is we start doing things very extremely, like too extreme, that we start to make tons of mistakes. And this is why I liked when Sunseem started to speak about making sure you don't just plan it as a church, but you have to plan it as an individual. What are you going to say? Who are you going to pick, right? It's not just whoever listens to me, they're coming to Bible study, right? It's not like that, because we have to pick the people like we are matchmaking with God. And these are all things that matter. It does, right? And even something in the past says, don't just bring people that are going to make it harder for you, right? People that you have to drag them and constantly, and they just take tons of energy away. And I'm sure you guys have seen it, where we see these newcomers that are just crazy, amazing, and they are giving power to the evangelists that brought them. Like, oh my gosh, they're doing so well. And then you have the other newcomers that are like, right? Because you have to call them constantly and you have to take care of them. They're always going through these things, mental stresses, and it's like, what is going on? The thing we have to do is we have to pray, right? If we didn't pray, think about it this way, guys. If it was just grab anyone you want, then there's no point in praying, because we're praying for the right people to come. We're praying for God to lead the right people to you, right? So if it's more about just grab anyone who's out there, then there's no need to pray. You should just grab anyone who's out there. But we have to realize it's not just God who sends people, right? Satan sends people too. It's true. And we have to realize that when we go out to evangelize, just because the word says go out to evangelize doesn't mean just go crazy, no discernment, and bring anyone you want. Why? Because that is not the case. We have to be wise. And one of the best advice that I got, that I really, really took to heart is, you should evangelize people that you would hang out with. You know what I mean? Like, evangelize people you like. That's your crowd. Right? Because if you don't, it's really, really hard to take care of them too, right? Everyone has their own groups of people, but we need to realize they have to be ready, whether it's character, that wanting, the thirsting for the word, how much prayer we put into it. Because remember this, the less prayer you have, the less discernment, right? That spiritual discernment we need. So if you don't pray that much and you meet someone, your discernment is very low, which means you're not going to know whether this person's sent by God or not. Remember, our goal is not to save everyone. You're like, oh, did Pastor Sky just say we're not here to save everyone? And the answer is, we're not. Okay, the best way to say it, we're not here to save everyone right now. What does that mean? The whole world isn't going to be saved right now. We are going to meet probably 8 to 9 out of 10, 80 to 90% of the people that we meet are not usually ready. Right? They're usually, we're trying to figure out if they're ready or not. So, I've seen people already, within the last week, people who've gone all the way to 10 times, half the times, and they still don't, or they choose not to study anymore. They choose this doesn't feel right. And they made it all the way to 10 times and a half. And honestly, guys, how many of you have met newcomers you led all the way to 10 times, half the times, and it's like, oh my gosh, is this it? And then wow, wow, wow. And it's like, what? How can they not realize, what happened? And we have to be those that are people of prayer. That prayer becomes such a powerful thing that helps us to discern. And through the prayers, we're able to meet in the soul world. through the prayers, we're able to see the signs. Through the prayers, we're able to discern whether we should keep going or stop for now, or bring them into another Bible study group, right? So this is why, like, one of the things we did here over here in Malaysia is we have a Saturday Bible study group that's not even 30 lessons. It's straight just Bible study, and that's it. It's just Bible study. Which means what? Which means that in these ones, it's very, very interesting, because when we learn this, we understand, oh, okay, some people aren't ready, so we put them into the incubator where they're still learning like big key points from the Sunday messages, but it's not quite the 30 lessons yet, right? And if they don't learn the 30 lessons yet, it's okay. It's all about, wouldn't you rather have someone where you didn't push them, and there's someone you push so hard and then they leave, or they're not ready for it, and there's someone else you spend an entire year just preparing them, and then a year later they stay. Like, which one would you rather have? Someone who leaves after, a year after putting all that work in, or putting an extra year in, preparing their hearts and everything else, and then allowing them to learn the word when they're ready, right? And that is something that we have to think about. Remember, the goal is not to teach the 30 lessons. That's not the goal. No, it's not to finish them. Because if the goal is just to finish, then you just teach them everything regardless if they're ready or not. If the goal is just to finish. The goal is to help them to realize a new history, which means that sometimes it takes a lot more time than we think. Sometimes we need to kind of give them time to digest, give them time to kind of like take that word, put it through their brain, study on it, and then move forward, right? And that is something that we have to think about clearly, that if we don't do these things, this is what causes a lot more of the problems, where people are kind of ushered into the history way too fast. Right? It's just way too fast, right? And I hope that that is something that we can realize and recognize much more clearly and better. Because it is true. We have to be those that really understand and realize what is happening, understand that, yeah, this history is such a great history, but it's not here to just give to anyone. It's almost like, remember, it's the time of the brides. It's not like you just date anyone. First, you need to get to know them. And after getting to know them, then you make a decision whether you discern whether they're the right fit for you or not, right? And that is something that we have to do when we come and bring people into this history. So don't just go crazy, and just because the message says evangelize, just start evangelizing every single person, just like, you all come to Bible study. No. We have to be wise. We have to discern. We have to pray. And we have to plan, right? Discern, pray, and plan. That's a great way. DPP. Discern, pray, and plan. And then we're able to bring the right people into this history more than anything else. Okay? So that is the word, not the word study. That's the last segment for today. Thoughts, especially going this week for when it comes to evangelism. Of course, usually on Tuesdays we have the best class ever with Jusung McMillan, Sean Jusung McMillan. But he's on a break for about 3 weeks, and then we'll see him and we'll hear about him a little bit later. Okay, guys? So that is the last segment for today. Hope you guys really enjoyed it. Have an amazing, awesome, awesome day. And we'll see you guys tomorrow on the Wednesday Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, I'm on the Morning Star Drive, I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, I'm on the Morning Star Drive,